All right. I'm going to assume, because it said you are live, that we are live. I guess John and Catherine, let us know if we're live because I think we are. Yeah, I think we're good. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning into the inaugural edition of Hey, I saw those guys. I don't know if I need a name, but I thought that kind of worked. So I'm
That
going with
works.
that. I'm going with that. Everybody that's here, I think, knows the drill or knows what we're going to do here. We're going to talk about the concerts that we've seen. Tonight is going to be our first concerts between the three of us. Alex and Rob are with me, obviously, as you can see them up on the screen. Guys, we got lasers, as best as I could come up with lasers.
I got white walls, man.
Yeah, and Rob's got his guitars, so
There we
that's
go.
the best I could do for lasers anyway. And this light changes, so it's like a stage here.
Looks great.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know
amazing.
about
I love
that, but anyway, so I see at least a couple of folks in the chat. So without further ado, let's kind of get into it. I've got a giveaway. We're going to do that a little bit later on. I say a giveaway because it is a code and a digital download code. So I don't know if that's cool or not, but easier than sending stuff by mail. And it is for, we're going to wait for a little while, but it's for the Age of Electric, Make a Pest a Pet. So, because I actually picked it up the other day and there was a download code in it, and I don't normally listen to the download code stuff. So someone's going to get that album here tonight at some point. We're going to give that away. What else do I have going on? Oh, and a red solo cup for Toby Keith. I don't know how many Toby fans in the audience, but you know, I didn't listen to him a lot, but his stuff was pretty good. And you know, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. So there you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. An American icon for sure.
Yeah. You know, I think a little polarizing, but still. Anyway, okay, we've got a few more coming in. Thanks everybody for tuning in. It looks like the regular crew, so that makes me feel good because at ease. Not that I get that nervous, but you know, again, want everybody to have fun and enjoy this. So,
well, when you have the clout of big time YouTube, so celebrities like Alex and I, we just dragged our audience over, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. You really, I'll just leave. You guys don't even need me. I'll leave the lights going so you have the lights, and then you guys just take it from there. So
Alex will start drinking his ass tea.
I can't, man. I drank yesterday and I'm drinking tomorrow. I had to get a day off. I had to pour one out for Joe.
There you go.
I'm just I just have my tea in my Yeti mug. So our first concerts that we ever went to. Hey, DJ Vinyl Vertigo, how are you, sir? Thank you very much for joining in as well. I'm not sure how much I'm going to pay attention to the stuff on the side. So if I miss you coming in and saying hello, like I did for Sam, you know, bear with me. We'll get this stuff figured out. So first concerts. I will go first. And again, there are no specific rules other than we're going to talk about tonight. Anyway, we're going to talk about the very first concerts that we went to. And I knew kind of Alex's, or at least I thought I did, because I thought I heard him mention it before. And then Rob and I talked a little bit about it, and we actually have a little bit in common. But my very first concert that I went to, and it happened to be actually this tour, the Expect No Mercy tour from Nazareth, and it was 1978. Wow. I think. Yeah, I think I was 13. Here, hold on a second. There's the poster. Now, that's not the poster. I wasn't in Moncton at the time. I was in Saskatoon, and it was at the old arena where you got all the asbestos that you could breathe every day. you got free asbestos, all you could breathe.
The concert that keeps giving.
Yeah, that's right. But that is that's the tour that it was. That's the album, obviously, that it was. And the reason I say we have a little bit in common, as you can see, who were the openers for Nazareth? Well, maybe you can't. I don't know, but yeah. So there you go. But, but we'll get to that. I want to ask you about if you guys remember who the openers were for yours as well. But yeah, it was the old Saskatoon Arena. That's not the right view there. That's better. And I went with my mom because I was 13 and she wouldn't. Well, she probably would have let me go because it was a different time back in 1978 when you were 13. You could basically just wander around all over the place, wherever you wanted, just hop on the bus and go. But she did come, and I think she enjoyed it. She's fairly hip. She would have been mid-20s at that point. No, not mid-20s, mid-30s, not mid-20s. That would have been a little odd, but
I wouldn't
yeah.
judge. You
I
know,
was just doing the math there.
Yeah, exactly. She was young. She wasn't that young, but and I remember it being a very good show. I was sober throughout the whole thing. So
Probably one of your only concert experiences.
yeah, it took a couple more years before I started drinking at them, but yeah, I was at that one, and I have seen them a couple of times since. But we'll get to your guys first, and then we can talk a little bit more about if we've seen them more than once and whether they were the same, better, worse, or not. So flip a coin. Alex, you're at the top. You go next. And like I said, I know who you're going to say.
yeah.
So do
Well, and, you know, I had to throw this back and look up the set list, you know, the site setlist.fm. And
Yep.
what's cool is that you're able to sort of go back and look. I mean, they keep all that stuff. So so you could go back to that show, the Nazareth show from 1978. Well, I don't know if anybody actually uploaded the set
Yeah,
list.
no, I looked. They don't have that one, but you're right though. They go back a long ways, but not that one. Yeah.
They go back a long way. So this goes back to August 6th, 2005. I was 15 years old. Recently, I would say at that time, really passionate about just, you know, music, rock and roll, the whole thing. I probably really started getting into it when I was about 14 or so. So, you know, was still fairly new to it. And not only was it my first like real concert, it was, I mean, looking back and kind of like going through this whole thing, I was like getting a little bit nostalgic, a little bit misty eyed with it. Because it was, you know, seeing my favorite band at the time. And as like the 15-year-old, the first band I ever fell in love with, the first band that I had to read everything and look up everything and that I was just so obsessed with. And I went with no parents. It was my older brother and then a couple of his friends. And we went, and it was held at a minor league baseball stadium in Eastlake, Ohio, which is, you know, kind of generically Cleveland, but really it's probably a good 45 minutes east of Cleveland, right on the lake. And it was seeing my favorite band ever, Def Leppard. And so they at the time, and I'll show kind of who they were touring with, was, you know, this was something that I came into them at kind of an interesting time, because I came into them with 2004, 2005, in which they weren't putting out new studio material. Their previous most recent studio album came out in 2002, and it was, I wouldn't say it was polarizing, because that implies that people loved it. Pretty much everybody hated it. And so it was like them going contemporary pop-ish. And so it wasn't to support an album per se, although in 2005 they had just released their second compilation. So it was called, like, the major one that they did was Vault in 1995. That was like their first greatest hits that sort of blew up. And then 10 years later they did Rock of Ages, the definitive collection. So basically just your typical greatest hits tour. But they took a note actually from Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson, who just a couple of years previously did essentially the same tour, where it was, we're going to go around to all these different minor league baseball stadiums and do these outdoor shows over the summer. So for me, I was there to see Def Leppard. But who were they playing with? None other than the Canadian icon. And of course, I'm so glad to have you two here tonight to share this moment with, Canadian icon Bryan Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, it's funny because one of the things I'll talk about, you know, that you're alluding to, Joe, is how many times I've seen them since. But it was a co-headline tour. Looking back now, interesting. I think it just kind of says a lot about where each probably were in their respective careers at the time. Because I don't, who knows what it would end up being now. But it was doing one of those like alternating between who opens and closes each night.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think the night that I was going, Def Leppard was closing it down. So, of course, it's one of those general admission shows. It's on a minor league baseball stadium. I think we got there around maybe 3 p.m. and I think the doors opened around like 7. So, like, I was that fan. I had to rush to the front, and I I'll never beat the moms, right? Like Def Leppard and Bryan Adams are big moms people. I'll never beat them, but I probably got up to maybe the third or fourth row. And I mean, looking back now and still thinking about it, like everything you hear and everything that you two might have experienced seemed like your band that first time. There's nothing like it. And yeah, so Bryan Adams, there was an opener who actually remember looking up the opener's name. It was just a guy out there with an acoustic guitar, and then he had one other guy playing acoustic guitar. His name was Randy Coleman. He never really blew up or did anything. I did look him up though. Still has a website. I guess still doing stuff. But at the time, do you remember the movie Crash from like the early mid 2000s?
Yeah, Gosling. Wasn't it Ryan Gosling in that one or no?
It might have been. I think it was one of those like weird anthology type movies where all the stories are connected and there's like a car crash and like one of those sort of things. Randy Coleman had a song that was in the movie. And so that was like, oh, the hit. So he opened the show. Bryan Adams comes on and blew me away. Of course, I knew like, Summer 69 and Everything I Do for You, all that kind of stuff. But as I told Rob before, it was one of those sets where I was like, damn near every song was, I've heard, I know that. Oh, I know that. Oh, I know that. And him and his band blew me away. I was there of like, I'll put up with Bryan while I wait for my band. But he was outstanding. Great set. Couldn't find the exact set, but I do know he opened with One Night Love Affair, which has always been one of my favorites since that, right? Like that experience of seeing the opener, like whatever they kick the set off with, will always just like stick in your head as a great tune. Now, here's the thing, and Rob and Joe, Rob, I know how you feel about Bryan. Joe, I don't know about you. I have 2 Bryan Adams records. That's it. And Reckless is not one of them. And the only reason I have 2, I think these were $2 buys, right? Like I've never gone to the Bryan Adams section and looked or bought Bryan Adams record, but I have Cuts Like a Knife, and then I have Into the Fire, which, in fact, I was looking, he didn't play a single song off this record.
And doesn't usually.
No.
He did play, obviously, Cuts Like a Knife from this, and then Is It Straight from the Heart? Also, that's on here. Also played that. But it was one of those, like, in 2005, I think 9 out of the songs out of his 15 songs were Reckless tracks, with obviously some Waking Up the Neighbor stuff sprinkled in there too. So, yeah, I mean, he blew me away, but obviously I was there to see Def Leppard, and man, they did not disappoint. I still remember just being like a child. First time I ever smelled or was around weed was then. I was like, what is this weird? It smells like BO and like weird, like off-brand soap. I'm like, what is going on? I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this tracks.
Click. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and what I'll say in terms of the show and tell in Def Leppard world, I mean, it was a pretty typical greatest hits set. I mean, I think 90% of their set list still, they're just pulling from Hysteria and Pyromania, which I got no problems with that. But they were, again, on that greatest hits sort of tour. But the album that was to come out the next year that they were sort of previewing, because they released a couple singles of, was this covers album called Yeah, which is maybe the worst name for an album ever. More like Oh. But this was like their typical mid-late career legacy band covers album, but with a special focus on sort of the glam stuff that they grew up with. So at the time, they were playing live. No matter what classic Badfinger song they played live. And then they would always do a rocked up version of David Essex Rock On. Just sort of that classic. I mean, really the original and what their version was doesn't sound anything like, but they've always done a really great version of that. And those were the two really like the, play a couple of modern things, and they were both covers, but everything else was pretty much a greatest hits thing. And blew my mind. Kind of solidified them as like the most important band for me at the time. And I think I have seen them now a total of 10 times.
Really? Good.
Twice last summer too, which was cool. Because when I saw them last summer on the stadium tour, twice, that was the first time I had seen them in I mean, they were hot and heavy, right? Like I saw them probably 6 or 7 times in the first 2 or 3 years. Like they were very quick, and then sort of I hadn't seen them in probably 12 years or so. But interestingly enough, when I went back and saw them again this past summer, I was just it took me back to being 15 again. Like it was one of those kind of transport moments. And they've always just been such a great live band. I mean, they were a band that obviously benefited a lot from arguably overproduction, right? It's the especially Hysteria and Pyromania. It's the Mutt Lange treatment. It's we have to quintuple track everything. We got a billion layers, all these different things. To me, what I've always been really impressed by was their ability to do their vocals and especially their backing vocals live. They all sing. And they work really hard at doing that and make it all live. So no backing tracks, none of that kind of stuff. But they've always just been incredible live for me and really mimicking that sound that was so overproduced in the 80s, but being able to take it on stage still to this day and do such a great job with it. So yeah, they still remain one of my favorite bands of all time. And just, they will always have such a soft spot in my heart for everything they've done. So
we'll let Rob go, and then we'll circle back because I've seen them as well. So, let's do that. I don't know if you guys have seen Nazareth or not, but we'll talk about that after. No, that's cool.
When we circle back, Alex has to tell the story about when he met Vivian Campbell.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And you have to tell your story. Before I forget, I wrote this down. Okay. Do you want to remember to talk about Helix, or do you want to talk about Helix now?
I can share that story real quick. It's a short story.
Perfect. Okay.
So you did your one of your 5 record videos, I think, right? The other day, and the first one you showed was Helix.
Yeah.
From Kitchener, Ontario, which is the next town over from where I live. And I said to Joe, I have a very funny Helix story. So my friend Bob that used to be in Wilco, he lives in Kitchener as well. And he had a guitar store there called Bob's Guitar Service. It's a guitar repair shop. And I used to just go over and hang out with Bob in his shop. And it was in this old, like 100-year-old building beside the train tracks. And I would just go over when I was supposed to be working. And we just, sit behind the bench and shoot the shit, and customers would come in and whatever. So one afternoon, I'm doing exactly that. Him and I are sitting behind the counter talking about whatever. And this guy comes in, and he looks like this guy looks like he's led a hard life. Really like rough looking dude, crazy hair. And he brings in this amp that looks like it's been through a war. And so he's telling Bob he needs to fix, needs this and that fixed and whatever. And Bob's talking to him for a few minutes. And I'm just sitting there 3 feet away from the guy, just, not really engaging in the conversation because, it's a business transaction. And went on his way. And Bob turns to me, he goes, "You have no idea who that was, do you?" I'm like, "Nope." He goes, "That's Brian Vollmer from Helix." Yeah. And I went, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because obviously I know who Helix is, but I did not and I mean, I knew they were from Kitchener, but I didn't expect that, he'd walk in and I could have shot the shit with the guy. So we kind of laughed about it. That was my close brush with Helix.
Brush with Helix. There you go.
Yeah.
So, okay. So who was number 1 for you?
Number 1 for me was the Guess Who from Winnipeg, Manitoba. International, kind of hit makers. Everyone knows sort of the big hits, American Woman, Laughing, Crying, Undone, all those big songs. I saw them in, I think it was 2000. So they did a tour called the Running Back Across Canada tour, because it's a play on they have a song called Dune. Near where you live, Joe.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
So I was 20 years old in 2000, and I got into music in like 94. So, I hadn't been to any rock concerts up to that point. But I'd started off as a classic rock fan, the Beatles, and then, Creedence and the band and Fleetwood Mac and that kind of thing. So, I mean, the Guess Who sort of fits into that kind of, the pool of artists, I guess you could say. And for the longest time, Randy Bachman and Burton Cummings, the two principal frontmen, had been at odds for years. And it was kind of one of those, these guys are never getting back together, kind of like Slash and Axl, that kind of a feud for various reasons. And then about 1998 or so, the two of them, I guess, for however it came to pass, made up. And they did I remember them doing an appearance on Much Music, which is like the Canadian MTV. They did an in-studio thing with just the two of them. They did some acoustic stuff. And I thought, man, wouldn't it be something if the Guess Who ever got back together? Because they hadn't played together in over 20 years in the original, American Woman lineup, because there'd been many lineup changes over the years.
Yep.
And I thought, man, if these guys ever get back together, I got to go, because they're one of the, most solid rock bands we've ever produced. I mean, they're not Rush, like they're not that good, but, for good radio friendly rock and roll, they made some great stuff. And
Yep.
Bachman went on to do, Bachman Turner Overdrive, and had some great stuff there too. So I thought, man, if that ever happens, well, then a year and a half later, they announce we're getting the band back together, and it's almost the American Woman lineup, minus one guy with an addition of a guy that came later on, but as close to the, prime lineup as ever. So I thought, man, I gotta go. So I think they did something like 30 or 40 dates across the country, and they were playing hockey arenas. How Canadian is that? So they played the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, which is a minor league hockey arena. I think it probably seats, 10,000 people. I don't know. So I'm like, I'm going. I bought 2 tickets. I'm like, I got to find someone to go with, because I don't know. I need to get over there. I don't have a car to drive. At that time, I was 20, right? I was in university, and every cent I had went into paying tuition. So I asked my buddy Graham, who's been my best friend for 35 years, so you want to go to a concert? And Graham the guy's a genius. He is literally, his IQ is off the charts, and he is not the type of person you would expect to go to a rock concert. But he plays classical music, and he plays in orchestras and stuff. But the guy loves rock concerts, which is just the most bizarre thing in the world. And Graham had a car. So I'm like, Graham, you want to?
The most important part, Graham had a car. Right?
Graham had a car.
Yeah.
And he was always like, absolutely, let's go. So Graham and I drive over to Kitchener to the Memorial Auditorium and saw the Guess Who. And they were every bit as good as I hoped they would be. They were phenomenal. They played all the hits, of course, and some deeper cuts as well. Just a phenomenal show. I loved seeing Randy Bach. I'm more of a, in a group where there's, sort of the two main people, you kind of always pick a side, right? So
yeah,
I'm kind of always on the Randy Bachman side, as I don't want to call myself a guitar player, but as someone who plays guitar, not well, but I play, I admire him as Joe Walsh is my guitar hero, but Bachman ranks pretty high on the list. So it was great to see him play, and it was an awesome experience. They have continued, Bachman and Cummings still tour together to this day, but they tour as Bachman Cummings because there's some legal issues, and they're actually suing the guy that owns the name, the Guess Who. The drummer, Gary Peterson, bought the rights to the name out from underneath them, and he still tours as the Guess Who, and he's not even in it. It's none of the original people. So it's like a tribute band at this point. But Bachman and Cummings are still going strong, but I'm glad I got to see the Guess Who lineup. And one quick appendix to the story. That was 2000, so I was in my second year of university. 2 years later, when I graduated, Burton Cummings was part of my graduating class. I have a degree in American history, but under the broad umbrella of general arts, he was given a music degree. So I got to meet Burton Cummings at my university graduation, and I had to shake the man's hand because Burton Cummings, why not?
Yeah.
So there you go.
That's great. That's awesome. So thanks, guys. I've seen, like I say, we'll kind of circle back a little bit. So when I saw the Guess Who because they were with Nazareth, so it was kind of the first show as well. But it was no Randy and no Burton at that point, so it was a Guess Who, but not the Guess Who.
Right.
I've since seen Burton by himself, and I've since seen Randy by himself, but never the two together. And it would be nice, because you get Guess Who songs with either of them, and you get solo stuff, but never them singing together. And I'd love to hear that. And I've never heard that anyway. So,
and I think they bring out the best of each other. They do.
Oh,
Because
sure.
I mean, they did stuff outside of each other, but I think the stuff the two of them did together was greater than anything the two of them did separately.
Yeah, definitely. And then I did see Def Leppard. I've seen Def Leppard a couple of times. I never saw them the In the Round tour, which was right after Hysteria. They did that In the Round. I saw them, I don't know, 5 years after that with Danko Jones. I'm not sure, Alex, if you're familiar with Danko Jones. Rob, I think you probably are.
I am.
And he's solid, and he's very, very good. And then I saw them about 4 or 5 years ago, and I think it was either Shinedown. Actually, I think it was One Bad Son might have even opened for them, which again, Rob, you're familiar with.
Huge fan.
Yeah, very good stuff. Very good stuff. So, but Joe can sing. Rick can play. Everybody is very, very good in that band still, and I think they get lumped in a little bit wrongly. Because they're out with Motley Crue, and we know the shit show that is Motley Crue right now. But Def Leppard is not that. And actually, I got a chance to meet them, kind of a hi, how are you, real fast meet and greet, but talk to their road manager. His daughter plays on my son's football team that he coaches.
Oh,
anyway, I can ramble live too, guys. But yeah, he is adamant. There are no backing vocals. There's no bullshit going on. Pardon the language, but it's it's my show. I can swear if I want. I guess I don't know.
Sure, you can. You make the rules.
Yeah, I make the rules. Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. And this was a few years ago, but I know that's still the case. And is Joe's voice the same? No, but it's pretty darn close still, right? I think you saw him last. Well, on the stadium tour, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? To your point too, they're still very, very adamant about we do the vocal warm-ups. We work really hard before, during, and after these shows to make sure there's no, smoke and mirrors going on. And yeah, I mean, Joe, I think sounds as good as someone's going to sound who has constantly toured as much as they have. And truthfully, I think Joe's voice, he never treated it well when he was in his prime, and it came back to bite him later. But I think he has done a great job working with a lot of trainers. The other thing that we didn't mention is one of their big things is they focused on health, right? It was important for them to have a healthy diet, to bring dietitians and exercise people on tour with them. It's kind of a joke, but they do bring an extra truck on tour that is simply their gym, because that's always just been important for them. And so they've always had to maintain that shape. You never had to, and that was always the joke, is you have Vince Neil running around being Vince Neil, and you're just like, God, this feels like a bad, backyard party. But so that had always been something really important for them too. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too that I remember seeing an interview years and years and years ago, they really turned down the stage volume, which I think in one way is oh, that's disappointing. I need a really loud show. But they said they had to turn down that stage volume or they would have completely just gutted their throat. So yeah, I mean, I thought they sounded as good as anybody in their mid 60s is going to. Obviously he doesn't sound like he does on Pyromania.
Sure.
There's a reason Photograph is at the end of the set all the time. But again, I just a pleasure that they're still out there doing it all the time and doing it so well. No drama. They never broke up. They've had tragedy in a number of different ways, but have always just done it in the classiest way. And that's always why I respected them so much more than so many other artists who spend more time, in the tabloids.
So I remember when that Bryan Adams Def Leppard tour rolled through town, because they played the Molson Amphitheater in Toronto, which is an hour from me. And I kicked around. Should I go? Should I go? Should I not go? And I didn't go. And it's one of those few shows that I regret not going. I'm a big Bryan Adams fan, and I love Def Leppard. I've seen Bryan Adams twice, and he was awesome both times. And it would have been great to see Def Leppard too. And I just kicked myself that I didn't go.
Yeah, we had a conversation. I think Alex alluded to it. I think the three of us had a conversation on one of the late nights about the partial dislike that you and I have for Bryan Adams. And that is not his music. That is not his talent.
Right.
That's just the overplay. I think it is for me anyway. It's the overplay. Now, where I am, there's a couple of radio stations. And if you're listening to the radio stations, you will hear Bryan Adams at least 3 or 4 times a day. It's not the same song, but he's got lots. So that's what it is. But as far as his live show, live was fantastic.
Great.
Yeah, he opened up the stadium here. He was the first to play there. It was him and Johnny Reed and Our Lady Peace, which was kind of a funky 3-way show, actually. It was pretty good. Johnny Reed was actually really good. A little more reggae than he is at the best of times. But yeah, if it was 2.5 to 3 hours long, and it was just, the guy has hits, and there was some great deep cuts and phenomenal band and great visuals. It was the whole 9 yards. So as much as I don't want to hear him, and as much as I turn it off when I hear him on the radio, I'd probably still go see him again tomorrow.
I've seen him twice, and again, I would go tomorrow too. And interesting Bryan Adams story, to circle back to my Guess Who story. The last time I saw Bryan Adams was when he toured for the 30th anniversary of Reckless, and he was playing Reckless in its entirety, start to finish, which was great. And I saw him at Copps Coliseum in Hamilton, which is, again, it's a minor hockey arena, but was built for an NHL team. So it's a big underutilized arena. But I saw him there, and it was a great show. And he comes out to do the encore, and he comes out on stage, and he goes, "I've got a couple friends here tonight in the building that want to come out and play with me. I hope you guys don't mind." And everyone's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Sure.
And out walks Randy Bachman and Kim Mitchell.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm just like, are you shitting me? Like, this
kidding.
is fantastic. So they did I don't remember what Bryan Adams song they did. And then they did Taking Care of Business, which is BTO. But Kim Mitchell didn't do any Kim Mitchell songs or Max Webster songs, which surprised me. Yeah. But they closed the show. They did a cover of, I think it was The Weight by the band. It was either The Weight or It Makes No Difference. Either way, it was a song by the band. I can't remember which one, but what a hell of a way to close the show.
That's good. Yeah, that'll work.
And I did see on that same tour. So I saw them in Eastlake, Cleveland, on August 6th, and then I think it was about the next week. Had my dad, God rest his soul, he was so supportive and would drive me anywhere across the country to see this band. But he drove me up to Lansing, Michigan, for the Lansing Lugnuts. They are the minor league team up there. Is the Lansing Lugnuts. Yep. Drove me all the way up there about a week later to see essentially the same show, and then I did see Bryan Adams several years later. I think I was telling you, Rob, maybe this was 2008 or 9-ish. Saw him again in Cleveland with George Thorogood opening.
Oh, that'd be good too.
Which was an interesting pairing, but sometimes that's the point, right? Is like, you can't just give two of the same types of acts because they're going to attract the same fans. So, put two people together that might be a little bit different, and you're going to get both fan bases. So, I guess that was, and I think that time he opened up with "There Will Never Be Another Tonight," and still to this day is one of my favorite songs because of that moment. So,
nice. Mine is too long ago. I can't remember exactly the set list. I know that there's some highlights, and Nazareth had a whole bunch of great songs, and it was a very good show. And again, the Guess Who was good, and they played all the Guess Who songs. It just wasn't the two main guys. So Alex, from the first time to Def Leppard to the most recent time, is there a lot of difference? Because I think the first time, arguably it was a bit of a lull for them, right? It was not coming off. I mean, it wasn't right after Hysteria. It was a couple of years beyond that. And then, it's not necessarily more nostalgia now for them. They're not out supporting new albums. They're just out on that tour and doing that. So was it different, or was it kind of the same show?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that first show, that could have been the worst show of their life the first time I saw them, and it was
Wouldn't matter.
it still would have been the greatest thing I've ever, you know what I mean? Like, just because I'm just so emotionally attached to it. It is interesting though, you know, they are the kind of consummate touring professionals, right? Like, they've been playing the same damn sets for 30 some odd years now. You know, the same types of moves. Like, Joe still does the same type, you know, all those different things. But I mean, that's all part of the performance and the stage show and the lighting and the video and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Like, I remember seeing them. So saw them this past summer here in Columbus at Ohio Stadium, where the Buckeyes play. That's college football for the Canadians out there.
We got it.
And then saw them about a week previously in Syracuse, New York. And so it was like I was in like the uppers in Syracuse, like, and just remember, like, as soon as they started, like, I just felt my body transport back in time. And so, yeah, I mean, they're certainly older. It's crazy to think about now. That was almost 20 years ago. Like, I thought they were old then, and they were like 40. And now it's like they're in their 60s, and that's just, I mean, that's incredible, right? Like, because they don't go on breaks. They don't release a ton of studio albums. They put out a studio album maybe once every 6 or 7 years. But in those off years, they're constantly touring. And I mean, they really are a hugely international band, right? So they're not just doing the States and Canada. I mean, they're constantly in Europe and in, you know, going to South Africa and in Australia and South America and all over the place. So, yeah, I mean, in so many ways, it's so similar. They're older, but I think their craft is still really strong.
So, Rob, I think Nazareth was maybe bigger here than they were in the States. And Alex, I should, I guess, be asking you, because I know they were big here. At least I know they were in Saskatchewan. I'm sure they were down east too, and they still continue to be. Now, it's not really. It's kind of like the Guess Who when it's not Randy and Burton. There's so many bands out there that are doing that, and we'll get into that another time, whether that's a cool thing or not. But it is, I guess. You got to have at least one guy in the band. But anyway, but good stuff like this one. This was Love Leads to Madness. So this was a little later in the career. And then there was I mean, they had some cool covers, but Rampant, there's another awesome one. I have no idea why I don't have Hair of the Dog, which is arguably, I guess, the biggest
song everybody knows.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure. So
speaking of overplayed radio songs.
Yeah, exactly. But did you see Joni Mitchell sing on the Grammys the other night?
Oh, powerful.
Yeah, it was very good. It was good. And I don't know. I assume everybody here knows that Hair of the Dog, or not Hair of the Dog. This Flight Tonight was originally a Joni Mitchell song written by Joni. But Nazareth, Play the Game. This one's good. This one's a really good one, actually. This one's got Holiday on it. And what else is on here? Hearts Grown Cold. So there's some other stuff. And then the Peacock one as well. So, yeah, just good stuff. Going Down Fighting, Turn on Your Receiver, Teenage Nervous Breakdown, lots and lots of good stuff. So I asked a question, then I started talking. So Alex, was Nazareth a thing for you guys?
I mean, I can't comment how big they were in the States in the mid-'70s, but I do know Hair of the Dog is still just a constant FM radio staple. I mean, that is almost overplayed, right? Like,
sure.
What's so funny though is I think that's the one Nazareth record I have. And I like Nazareth because, I mean, they are, you know, you talk about that sort of, I hate to call it proto, but like, I mean, genuine hard, heavy rock of the early mid 70s.
Sure.
You know, he was, I can't think of his name. I know we just lost him a couple years ago. His last name starts with an M, the singer.
Yeah,
you know,
I should know. I'll look. You talk, I'll look.
Yeah, but, you know, he was doing the sort of, you know, Brian Johnson, Bon Scott, Axl Rose, super gritty, scratchy. I mean, he was doing that thing well before it sort of became, you know, so big. What always blows my mind, though, is that, you know, you have Hair of the Dog, which is obviously the monster track. The other monster track off that record is Love Hurts. It couldn't sound like a different band.
Yeah.
It couldn't. But I've always thought that off Hair of the Dog, Miss Misery is an incredible song. I mean, I think that's what kicks it off. But yeah,
McCaffrey.
It's McCaffrey. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah,
outstanding. And Scottish, Scottish, right? Like, there's not a ton of Scottish artists out there. So, but those two songs were huge, and so I know they obviously benefited from those huge radio songs, but I don't know to the extent that they were like an album band, as much as those two major singles during 73 or 74, whenever Hair of the Dog was, something like that.
The Ballad of Hollis Brown on this one by some dude named Bob Dylan.
Yep.
On this one, they definitely did some covers, but they made them their own. I mean, This Flight Tonight, if you've never heard Joni Mitchell's version, it's nothing like. It's good. It's still good, and I enjoy it. But if you've heard the Nazareth one first, it's very odd. But it was hers to begin with. So, a couple of comments here, and everybody, let me know who you guys saw first. I've been trying to pay attention. I've been listening to the gentleman on screen. I've been trying to pay attention. But who are your first shows as well? Let me know. So did you say who opened up for the Guess Who? Do you remember who opened up?
Yeah, it was a band called Wide Mouth Mason. Do you remember those guys?
Yeah, actually, my brother knew the bass player, whose name escapes me, but yeah, they were buddies up in Saskatoon. Another Saskatoon band.
That's why I figured you would know them, and they were pretty good.
Yeah,
they had that, and I can't for the life of me remember the song, but they had a big hit around 2000 that it got played a lot on Much Music. And apparently, they just put out a new album, I guess, within the last couple of years.
Yeah, and then the bass player, again, I should remember his name, but I don't. I don't smoke weed anymore, but I used to. So I use it as my excuse for my mind starting to go. I think he's in a band called the Sadies as well, or he does a little bit of stuff. With
no, there's no. I love the Sadies. The guy, the bass player for the Sadies is Sean Dean.
I thought he had something to do with them, but good stuff. And you should seek the Sadies out, everybody, because they're really good. But
that's a whole different country psych weird
good
psychedelic.
It's just very good. So here we go. So we got a couple of first concerts. So there's a pretty decent first concert right there. I'm working the chat, folks. I'm trying to figure all this out. My first time hosting one, but that's a pretty decent first show back in 1989, Billy Joel. And we talked a little off screen or before we came on about Billy Joel on the Grammys, and I thought he did a great job. I liked the song. That's not why we're here, but what the heck, we can talk about it a little bit. So,
one thing I'll say too, what's been great about following, and I think when people do this the right way, it's really great. But I've always appreciated when I've seen, Def Leppard out there over the years. Only once had I seen them in a true headlining capacity where they had an hour 45 or 2 hours of playtime.
Sure.
And I think that also plays a role. They're not going out and playing 3-hour shows. And so they would always bring a ton. So I've gotten a chance to see a ton of other groups live, whether that be Styx multiple times or Foreigner, not old Foreigner, but Foreigner back in the mid-2000s. More Foreigner then than they are now. Cheap Trick, that was the big one.
I saw Cheap Trick open for Aerosmith.
Yeah, and I love Cheap Trick. I feel almost bad that they have sort of positioned themselves as like the ongoing opener for bigger bands slot, but whatever pays the bills. Because I would want to see them do the 2-hour show with all the deep cuts and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's what's nice. There's been a lot of bands along the way that I've been introduced to by being the opening band. So it's always a good thing. So let me get a couple of things out of the way before I forget. I want to get to a couple more of the first shows from those in the chat. So for those in the chat and for you guys as well, I'd like to do this every Tuesday. Now, it's not going to be our first show every Tuesday. It could be, I guess, and we could talk a little bit more. But I'm going to try and pick some artists, and I'll look for some folks to come on camera and talk about who they saw. I don't necessarily have to have seen them. I've been to a fair amount of shows, so it might help. But so watch my channel, I guess, and there will be announcements as to what we're going to do next Tuesday. Hopefully this has been okay. Hopefully it's been entertaining and everybody's been having a good time. And then as well, I've got a giveaway, and I'm just not exactly sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'll come up with something creative before the end here. The end being 9. We'll go for an hour. This is the download card. I hold it back here like you can see it. This is a download card for The Age of Electric, which is Todd Kearns' band. Todd from Regina, Saskatchewan. Most currently playing, and you guys have heard me talk about this, most currently playing with Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. He's a conspirator, him and Brent Fitz. They're also in the band too. Anyway, this is The Age of Electric, Make a Pest a Pet. So it's got remote control on it, was the big hit. I'm going to give this away. I'll give you guys whoever wins, I'll give you my email address and I'll get you this download code. So we're going to do that. We've got a few more people in from earlier. So once again, a little red Solo Cup for our friend that passed away, unfortunately. And I like Toby. Toby's pretty cool. And what else? Yeah, let's just get back to it here. So how about this one? James Brown. That's a pretty good starter. Right?
I'd say.
That's a good finisher. That's a good at any point, I would think, anyway. So we're gonna have to talk about that again. I have not seen, but there's gonna be some times where I won't have seen it, and I'll just have some of you guys on to talk about the shows that you've been to. Let's see what else have we got here. We got the Jay Giles band, who I've not seen. Have either of you guys seen Jay Giles at all?
Nope.
I would. I just haven't ever seen them. So, but I guess we can't anymore. I don't even know. Yeah, I don't think Peter Wolf is out doing anything. Did Peter Wolf pass away? I should know this. Maybe he did. Geez, that's bad. Anyway. Anyway, never got a chance to see them. Never got a chance to see these guys either. Old version, new version, but they're out touring, and I'm not sure if it's a final or not. But
now I saw this is a very interesting nerdy Journey reference. So in 2006, when I was still on that Mega Def Leppard train, they went out and co-headlined with Journey. Brilliant. Now, this was in the Journey, of course, actually going way back, the first 3 Journey records are nothing like what we know of Journey. They're jazz fusion records that came out of the Santana band. So you had, Greg Raleigh and Neil Schon up there ripping. I mean, I love those first 3 Journey records. And then they brought in Steve Perry, and then obviously they kind of became the mega AOR band that they were. Steve Perry ends up obviously leaving the band sometime later, and he's replaced by a Steve Perry lookalike named Steve Algieri, who kind of took them through much of the, I guess, late 90s into the early 2000s. And then in 2006 or whenever it was, Steve Algieri leaves, gets kicked out. I don't think it was very civil, but Journey's never been really civil with these things. And in the meantime, before they kind of hold like a, who they later would replace with Arnel Pineda or whatever from the Philippines, they had Jeff Scott Soto step in for a singular tour in 2006. Who's Jeff Scott Soto, you may ask? I mean, Jeff Scott Soto was known for being like this kind of classic metal singer in Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force band. He would later, and still to this day, he's a touring member of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. What's funny is he has like this really, really deep voice. Like he's like 6'4" and like a huge dude. Like his voice is not, he just must have been like the perfect hired gun, because there's no way that anybody would look at his voice and be like, oh yeah, it's a perfect Steve Perry sound-alike at all. But he did a great job, and it's kind of like this lost, forgotten moment in history in the Journey catalog. But I feel great seeing that tour and getting to see him a couple of times on that tour, because after that tour, he was out, he was done, and they moved on with their careers.
Yeah. So I say that I've seen Nazareth 3 times. I saw them in their entirety when I was 13. When I was 19, I went to a cabaret they were playing, and I was late getting there. All my buddies were there early. I was working. I got there. I drank so much. I fell asleep in the first song, passed out, not fell asleep. Let's call it what it is, and woke up for this flight tonight. So I've seen them once and a couple songs, and then I saw them again I don't know, 12, 15, 17 years, something like that. Anyway, my daughter, who was about 10 or so at the time, this is too loud. I don't like this. So we left. So I've seen them once fully, and then I've seen a couple songs by them a couple of times. So let's see. I assume, John, was that the first time or just in general? I'm not sure if that's the case or not. Yes, Catherine said, oh, I lost my light. There we go. Nope. You guys don't need to see me. Oh, well, technical difficulties.
You look great.
Yeah, I look fine, right? You can still see me. I got the lasers going, so who needs light?
That's to the ambiance.
Yes, John Catherine said Billy Joel back in '89, I believe. Tragically Hip. That's always a very good first one as well.
I've heard the Tragically Hip live, but not seen them live. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I've seen them live on TV. That was unfortunately it for me.
Here's the weird part.
How did we not see the Tragically Hip though, Rob?
I'll explain it real quick. I'm not, for the guy that claims to be the Canadian music guy, I'm not a Tragically Hip fan.
Yeah,
don't like them. Can't stand them. And I should probably lose my citizenship over that. That's how important that band is to Canada. But I went to Ontario Place when Ontario Place was still Ontario Place, which is we'll call it an amusement park, but it's not really an amusement park, on the water in Toronto. This is almost 20 years ago. And the Molson Amphitheater is there, which is an outdoor concert venue. And it's an amphitheater. It's built into a hill, so you can sit in the seats or you can get general admission seats on the grass. They were playing a show on Canada Day, and I was there with my girlfriend, who became my wife, and two other friends. We were there for the Canada Day fireworks. So we were walking around Ontario Place, and we were sitting on the opposite side of the hill, and you can't see in unless you have a ticket. But I'm only 10 feet away from the people that are actually sitting on the grass listening to the show. I'm just on the other side of the fence. So while I didn't see them, I sat on a hill and listened to the Guess Who, 200 feet away, playing an entire show. So I've heard them live, but not actually seen them live.
So as a musician, then, what did Susanna think of them? You said your girlfriend and wife at the time, and current wife.
Yes. Kim, not Susanna.
No, Susanna Hoffs.
It was a Hoffs joke.
That's my fantasy wife.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
Oh, I get you.
Okay. All right. What else have we got here? Oh, I know this one. I even know who this is, because she talks about it often, and I'm going to get her on camera, and she's going to talk about the Bay City Rollers. That's my lovely wife watching. I wanted to make sure at least one person was watching, and I thank everybody for being here. But she said that she would join in tonight. So that was her first concert at the Agridome in Regina. There you go. Seeing him again in May. Peter Wolf. Yes, we have clarified that he is alive. Let's see. No hoop tea. No hoop tea, right? You said no hoop tea tonight, right?
No hoop tea. Liver needs a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. If you lose your citizenship, Rob, I will take it. So FVA, we're gonna get him in this country yet, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was worried. I wasn't worried that you guys would be able to talk and we'd be able to do this, but I had some questions written down. We're not going to get to any of them, but which is fine, because that means that it went really well, and I think everybody was hopefully entertained and got to hear about ours. And again, I would like everybody to come on and join me in future episodes. Hopefully, we can continue to do this. Whether you've seen the band, I've seen the band, or we've both seen the band, we'll come up with something. We'll figure it out. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. What was I going to do? I think that was all I was going to do, because it's about, well, we got 6 minutes. So, okay, here's the encore. So I don't remember. Maybe you guys remember, because it's a little bit closer. Was there a song that you wanted to hear that they did not do? Alex, you go ahead with Def Leppard and or Bryan Adams, if you like.
Well, not necessarily, not outside of, like, trying to be realistic. They're not going to play,
sure,
the deep cuts or anything like that. So, so not necessarily. What I will say is that When I saw them in up near where Trevor used to be, when I saw them at the Palace of Auburn Hills, and that was when they headlined and Cheap Trick opened. They obviously, I think they had maybe an hour and 50 minutes or so. So they were obviously able to squeeze in, a few more. I mean, that's the reality is that they can't get away with not playing Pour Some Sugar on Me or Animal or something, or the people are going to riot. So they don't have a ton of wiggle room. But they played for that one. They played Gods of War, which is sort of a deep cut off Hysteria, which is arguably one of my favorite songs. So I will say, kind of reverse disappointment of, it was really cool to see them play that song live during that show, because it's one of my favorite songs and sort of the hidden gem on the Hysteria record, for sure.
That's good. Rob, do you remember? Was there one they didn't do?
I mean, the Guess Who was so long ago, but if I'm basing it off of the CD from that tour, I mean, they hit everything. I mean,
Sure.
They had many more hits in Canada than they had in the US. And with the hits that are hits here, they easily fill a 2-hour show. Not a problem. So I don't think there was anything that I expected that they missed. And I think about Bryan Adams in reference to Alex. Having seen him twice, I mean, there are, to Alex's point, realistically, yeah, I mean, there'd be some deep cuts I'd love to hear, but he's not going to play them because he's also got so many hits that he could fill an entire show with no problem. And of course, he played all of the big hits. But what I enjoyed most when I saw him was, hearing Reckless, the entire album start to finish. It's always a fun kind of experience. I've been to several concerts where the artist has featured an entire album in its entirety, and that's always a fun thing to do, because it's typically obviously their most popular album, and there's songs in there that you never thought you'd hear live because they're ultra deep cuts. But yeah, I liked hearing Reckless live. And he also debuted, there was 3 or 4 songs that got cut from the original album that he played live and then were subsequently released on the anniversary edition of the album. So that was kind of neat. There's 3 or 4 songs I hadn't heard before because they had never been released before.
It gets tougher as the band gets older and we get older, when there's just so much to choose from. Even going to see Paul McCartney, played for 3 hours and change or whatever, still there's some more songs. That's a good example and a bad example. But so there's an AC/DC song that I've yet to see them play, and I've seen them 3 times, and I don't know if I'm going to get to, but they're teasing a tour a little bit on their website. They've got the lightning bolt, and there's a couple of things going on. So I'm hoping there's going to be a tour. It might just be Brian and Stewie and good Lord, and Angus. Yeah. So, but that'll work. That's cool. Okay. So, thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. Alex, pick me a number between 1 and 7.
Let's go with 4.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 4 back, because I'm taking myself out. In the chat is Catherine. So Catherine wins the download card. Catherine, there is my email there. Send me an email and I will get you that download card. Okay. So again, it's for a very cool band. I hope you'll like them. Not positive they're your style, but you give them a shot and there you go. So just send me an email and I will get you that download card. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. It's been fantastic and went by very quickly, but I think an hour is probably good. That'll probably work for tonight anyway, right?
That was great. Thanks for having us on, man. I appreciate being the inaugural guest.
An honor and a privilege, Joe. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it. I've got a buddy, Alex, that has seen Peter Gabriel on the most recent tour. So I may have you and them on, and Rob will find something. Sure. I know you want to come on and you want to talk about Kiss, so we'll do that when that comes
yeah,
up.
Absolutely. My favorite band.
For sure. Seen them over and over again, right?
More times than you, I bet.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, thanks very much, guys. Thanks, everyone in the thread. Keep an eye on my channel, and I'll put it in the community tab. Who's going to be next Tuesday? Hopefully, I can get a couple folks to join me on camera, and we'll go from there, because you don't want to listen to me for an hour. That's for damn sure. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Catherine, send me an email. Everybody else, have a great night, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.